This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go a little deeper, where we dig, we go behind those headlines, and we bring you those stories that people are talking about. And today is World Autism Day. If you've been online, if you've been on your X account, your Instagram account, your Facebook account, you know that World Autism Day is trending. It's trending, that phrase, that term is trending all over social media, because this is the day where the entire world, not just those of us in the United States, but people across the globe come together to raise awareness and to promote acceptance of those individuals living on the autism spectrum. Yesterday, I talked about my own journey as a mother of a son on the autism spectrum and the nonprofit that I started in Los Angeles, California, to serve families, predominantly Black and Brown families, predominantly families who are underserved. My nonprofit has served tens of thousands of people since our inception, and we've grown from a tiny cubicle in my law firm to having over 5 offices across the state of California, and close to 500 employees. And we are continuing to grow. And that is because autism now impacts 1 in 36 individuals. It's a spectrum disorder. People on the spectrum all present very differently. But because the disorder is growing so rapidly, we're learning so much more about it. We're not only seeing children diagnosed, we're also seeing adults come out. We've seen several celebrities over the last couple of years come out to say that they've been diagnosed with autism. So it's not a diagnosis that is just reserved for children. You can be diagnosed with autism as a teenager and even as an adult. But because today is World Autism Day, we want to highlight those organizations and those groups who are doing things in their own communities to raise awareness and promote acceptance. And I'm excited today to be joined by Eric Williams, because he is the founder of Project Elijah Empowering Autism. And this is a passion project for Eric, because he is, like me, he's a parent of a son who is on the autism spectrum. So Eric saw a need in his community, and rather than gripe about it and complain about it, he took action. And I love people like that. I love people who just step in and step up. We all can complain. All can talk about what somebody else didn't do or should have done, but we can also be the solution. We can be the answer to the problem. And that is exactly what Eric Williams is in being the founder of this nonprofit and working to serve his community of West Philadelphia. When we come forward, we're going to sit down and talk with Eric Williams, and one of his partners, an attorney, Derek Green, is also joining us to talk about the work they are doing in Philadelphia through this nonprofit and how they are serving families and how they are acknowledging World Autism Day. Welcome, Eric, and welcome, Derek. Thank you both so much for joining me tonight on World Autism Awareness Day. First question for you, Eric, is tell us about Elijah. Tell us what he likes, what he dislikes, what he's doing, how he got his diagnosis. We just want to get to know Elijah better.
So first, thank you for having me. Elijah is this 25-year-old happy-go-lucky young adult. If I can gauge his education component, I would say he's about kindergarten or first grade at best, but he's a natural athlete. His socialization is extremely high. He has a job where he works at a hospital, a rehabilitation center, 3 days a week, and he catches 2 buses on public transportation to get to and from work. So semi-independent. He has this amazing lifestyle. His smile will light up any room. He loves to dance, plays tennis, golf, basketball, bowling, skating, you name it. That's what Elijah is all about. But his smile is just infectious. So I'm just honored to watch him as he developed his journey. It's just an amazing to see him from where he was diagnosed at the age of 3.
Wow. I love that. I love how independent he is with a job, because we know so many individuals on the autism spectrum are not employed. Lots of employers have these really antiquated notions that people on the spectrum somehow can't work or that they're dangerous. So I always love to hear when our young people are working, because it helps to break down those barriers and it shows people that their myths and these tropes about people on the autism spectrum are just wrong. And then I love to hear that Elijah, is out there doing his thing, dancing and playing sports. And I just love that. You mentioned that he was diagnosed at the age of 3. How did you get his diagnosis?
First, I didn't know anything about it. I was watching an infomercial in the middle of the night, and I just was like, wow. And some of the classic signs of autism: flapping his hands, he was stimming a lot. He was sensitive to touch. He would try to get up on a chair and just flick the light switch and ceiling fans. So I was like, wait, something. And then ironically, I saw this infomercial, and then immediately I scheduled an appointment with his pediatrician. Doctor, something wrong. And I know it because I was watching this. And then I saw Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman, figuring, okay, this is going to be okay. He's going to have a talent and it's an amazing gift, but the harsh reality, he didn't have neither. So when I took him, the doctor was like, don't worry about it. Boys progress slower than girls. Try to pacify me as a parent. But deep down inside, if you're a parent, I knew that something wasn't connecting. So I just, from there, I just got off the sidelines. I didn't want to be one of those dads that 20, 30 years later, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, let me start something now. And I didn't know what to do. So as much as, me bringing on leading an organization, before then, I didn't even know, but I had to understand what that was like as a father.
Wow, Eric, I'm just sitting here. You're giving me chills because the journey for parents, typically it's the mothers, no shade to dads, but typically it is the mother who's taking off work, that's carrying the kid to all the different appointments, that's showing up at the school for the different IEP meetings, that's really carrying the load. So when I hear you as a dad say you knew something wasn't wrong, something wasn't connecting, not wrong, because there's nothing wrong with our kids, but that when you knew he was a different learner, that he had some things going on that were different than what we call neurotypical kids, that you took the initiative and did that, and that you didn't want to be a dad that looked back. We know that for a lot of men, there have been some studies done on this, they have a difficult time accepting that their child, particularly sons, because boys are more likely to be diagnosed with autism than girls. There are 4 times as many boys with autism than girls. How did you as a dad, particularly a Black dad, because, make the adjustment in your mind that your son may not be, like a star. Your son is an athlete, but I'm talking, like playing college football or college basketball or going to, the NBA or the NFL or whatever dreams dads may have for their sons. How did you reconcile what those dreams might have been with what the reality of your son was?
First, Elijah had 2 older brothers. And watching them develop as a typical child, and as men, we just tend by nature to be fixers and problem solvers. So I was in denial for a few years, just thinking he's going to be just like my son, hoping, wishing, and praying that tomorrow will lead to a normal life. And then once that harsh reality, my mom used to always, tell me scripture things, Elijah in the Bible, it says his power is in his hair. So just keep stroking his hair, little things like that to keep me encouraged, as I didn't know what I was walking into. So as I slowed myself down, I started to grasp a greater appreciation of Elijah, looking at my 2 sons that were older than him. How do we rally around and take care of this? So without even having an answer, I was just on the experimental side of things. I'm trying this, I'm trying that. No success. However, my internal success is just being a committed father, with or without autism. I just had to make a difference. And we were just trying things. He was sensitive to touch, hugging, couldn't get in the car. The seatbelt restraints would irritate him. So I had to get out the car and walk a lot of times. Catching public transportation, it was an inconvenience for me and for my other 2 sons, but it was amazing for Elijah just to get out. And even when he got out, the sunlight bothered him, the noise, the traffic. He oftentimes had his fingers in his ears and so forth. So how do we start to learn about that? And I started to find his life, once I got out there now, as fascinating.
Wow. Now, you haven't mentioned a mother. Obviously, he has one. So was his mom in the picture at all?
Yeah, she was very supportive of that. And we were young parents at the time, learning at the same time. However, her interpretation of what it was, and the reality of it was a little different from mine. We always had a supportive system. We worked together because it was all about doing what's right rather than who's right. We just amazing till this day. We have an amazing chemistry about us with all our children. But she's been very supportive and continues to be. In fact, Elijah lives with her, and she takes a lot of the responsibility for his day in and to day out, because it's where they live. His job is so closer to that. We actually had to move him out of Philadelphia just a little bit so he can kind of travel safely. And that was after during the COVID era.
Now, you mentioned 2 older sons. How much older are they than Elijah?
So he'll be 32. So Elijah's 25. So one is 7 years old and one is 5 years older than him.
Now, there's often also in some families, the siblings aren't always very supportive. Sometimes the siblings, there are issues because a parent may be pouring so much of their time and energy into that child on the spectrum that they don't have a lot left in the tank, so to speak, to give, to those other kids. And sometimes those other kids, the siblings, as we call them, the sibs, develop resentment. Sometimes they develop their own mental health challenges, emotional issues, acting out issues in school. Did you see any of that with your 2 older sons?
No. So first, I want to make a correction. Elijah's brother is 2 years older, not 5. So I did see I didn't see any of that, and I think that that came from my leadership and the way I treated Elijah. And even though I didn't know what autism was fully about, I also let them know that it's okay that I don't know. We're gonna figure this out together. So, and at the time, during Elijah's younger years, I traveled the country for freelance opportunities to work. So I had to leave the parental responsibility to my son, Evan. And Evan, he was an honor student all the way through. And he was oftentimes did the daddy responsibilities. So I owed a lot to Evan when I came back, but Elijah was always in good hands, even with my older son. So it was amazing just to be honest and open with them. I don't know what's going on, and daddy can't fix it. And this is where Elijah is. But we're going to get it. We're going to get there together. So once I know something, by them seeing my leadership, they'll know at the same time. And when they made them, not always incorporated them.
And so what's the relationship like? Are the boys close? The young men, I'm calling them boys, but are the young men, do they have a close relationship? Do they enjoy like those sports you said that Elijah enjoys? Does he get to do any of those activities with his brothers?
Yes. So my oldest son, he's moved on. He has children his own, so he doesn't get a chance to spend time with Elijah. My son Evan, Elijah has a younger sister, and then he also has 2 younger siblings. So he's a little brother and a big brother all rolled into one. And Elijah's that centerpiece, not saying because he's third of 6, but he's just right there in the middle. He's like the center post of just, get that if you want that hug, if you want that smile. Elijah's very articulate when it comes to birthdays and ages. So if he knows your birthday, he would definitely give you a call. He would definitely text you in the morning just to say, hi, I'm thinking about you. His grammar may not be to where society may deem successful. However, he will reach out and acknowledge you in his own way, shape, or form.
Wow, that's amazing. So Derek, let's bring you into this conversation. What's your relationship with Eric, and how did you get involved in this nonprofit Project Elijah Empowering Autism? We're going to talk a lot about what led Eric to start it, but I'm curious as to how you know Eric and Elijah.
Well, I've been blessed. I'm a recovering elected official, so the at-large member of city council. And Eric is very modest. He has been a mentor for so many fathers in the greater Philadelphia region because people see the work that he does and the work that he continues to do. And so as a at-large member of city council, and I say former member of city council, and I often would say that, yes, I'm a city council member, an attorney, but my most important title is father. And so I also have a son, Julian, who's on the autism spectrum. He's 2 years younger than Elijah. And I've seen the work that Eric has done with his organization. Julian has participated in some of those activities. And I've always tried to partner with him to help him to support the work that he's doing because it's challenging as a father with a son on the autism spectrum, and you're trying to navigate this learning difference. And the fact that, Eric really expertly said that as men, we try to fix things. And this is something that's not just a fix. We have to kind of learn through the process of, your child has a learning difference. And how do you cope with that? Because you, as fathers and as mothers, yourself being an advocate, you project certain things on what your child hopefully will do when they go through high school. And Eric is a phenomenal basketball player, and they took that sports perspective, and then genes is carried over to Elijah. But there's certain things you think your child's going to do, and you have to get through that denial process and focus on what's the best thing for your child and help your child to be a self-advocate. And so working over the years and helping to support the work that Eric has done. But not only that, seeing how he and Elijah have matured gave me a pathway in reference to me and Julian. And I remember a program that my son went through called Project Search, and Elijah was in that program at Drexel University in Philadelphia. And seeing Elijah walking down the street with a couple friends going through Project Search gave me and my wife some comfort that we could possibly see Julian in that same space. And it's interesting, about a year after Julian left that program, someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, I saw Julian on Market Street walking with some other people." And it brought me back to the same feeling I had seeing Elijah do the same thing with his friends. And so Eric has been a real leader in this space, and it's been a pleasure to support him in any way that I can.
Well, representation matters, and you're so right, Derek. So you had Eric and Elijah as role models, and now you and your son Julian are role models, to younger kids and teens coming up in that community. And that's what is so important. I mean, I remember when my own son, Marty, I have a son, we all have sons, Marty was diagnosed. I didn't see other Black families that looked like our family, who were openly talking about autism and sharing about autism. And that's what led me to start my nonprofit, was because I just knew there had to be more families out there. So it really makes me happy when I'm sitting here talking to two Black men who often, as a group, y'all get, castrated, you get, maligned often. People, have really distorted and false, narratives that they have told themselves about Black men. But I've done a lot of research. I've interviewed a lot of folks, and Black men are some of the most involved parents there are, even though, again, like I said, oftentimes not portrayed that way in the media. But just to see that both of you, so engaged, so involved with your sons and taking on the responsibility. There used to be a time when fathers, not just Black fathers, but all fathers, really struggled with acceptance of their sons with this neurological condition called autism. So to see that acceptance is much more prevalent, that more people are talking about, more people in our community, the African American community, is so critically important. So Eric, tell us, what year did you start the organization, and what was your impetus for starting it?
The organization Project Elijah Empowering Autism, PEEA for short, was established in 2004. So of course it was named after Elijah, and the reason for it, back then I didn't know what autism was, but unlike the other organizations that were more structured around finding a cure, it was unacceptable to me not to have proper programs in place while the experts search for a cure. So as Derek mentioned, basketball, I grew up playing basketball. So one day I rented out a gym, got 50 RSVPs. Next thing you know, 200, and nobody showed up. So just when I was ready to pack it up one day, figuring, okay, maybe this may not be the way to go. 40 people came through the gym, and it was like Christmas to me. So as I was working with the parents and learning from them, I saw all of the individuals with unique abilities. I never say special needs or disabilities. I always say unique abilities, because it's just a uniqueness about them. If we take the time, we can tap into to learn what that is. So if you hear me phrase that, then that's my equivalent to that. So I just took them in the gym one day, started shooting around playing basketball. So I figured I could kill two birds with one stone, have the parents meet with them periodically, but more important, I started to gravitate toward the participants. So PEEA, we host free year-round education, recreation, and last year we added trauma to that. Basketball, tennis, bowling, golf, horse lessons, 2015, took 60 families to Washington, D.C. to visit the Capitol and Smithsonian Museum. So we always look to do unique and innovative things that they give them these experiences. Now we're tapping into dating. We doing modeling, improvisation, acting, teaching them how to DJ, those unusual experiences that some I grew up off of. And then one that my parents, they trust me so much that at first they may not think that their loved one can participate in a program, but after they get warmed up, knowing that they're in a safe, nurturing, and judgment-free environment, they just follow, and we just continue to go. And this is 20 years. This is what 20-year journey looks like.
So, Derek, obviously you and Eric figured it out. You maybe didn't know all the answers at the beginning of your journeys, but you figured it out. And not only did you figure it out, you figured out a way to help other families who are on this journey. But on your journey, Derek, and even in working with Eric, what are some of the biggest obstacles that you see families in your community of Philadelphia? What are some of the obstacles that families face in this moment?
Well, some of the real challenges for parents that have a child with a learning difference is making sure they have, one, the right educational system, the right behavioral health care for their child, the right developmental pediatrician. How do we navigate those services? We are blessed here in the city of Philadelphia of having some great institutions, organizations that have been around for decades, like the Center for Autism and Children's Hospital, University of Pennsylvania, and having some real dedicated advocates like Eric and the work that he's done. But also a challenge is so many parents want their child to have the same type of activities that a neurotypical child would have. So the activities that Eric has started with PEEA, from tennis, basketball, trips to DC. So many parents are concerned. They're like, I want my child to have the same experience as some of their siblings or some of the other people in their community, but are not quite sure how that will occur, because the concern is, what if my child has a breakdown and starts stemming and has some type of perspective? How are people going to look at my child or look at me, and just deal with those type of situations, and how to make sure that your child is safe in those environments. So having an organization like PEEA with parents and people who understand those differences and perspectives really gives the comfort for a parent, a caregiver, to give the same type of upbringing for their child like other children in the community. And that's been a real blessing in the city of Philadelphia. And I think about the activities that Julian has participated in over the years. It's having advocates and people like Eric that have put together these type of activities that really give parents a peace of mind that their child can have an upbringing like any other child in their community.
So obviously running a nonprofit is not easy. And you mentioned that you did some freelance work and you traveled. What has been one of the biggest obstacles for you as a nonprofit leader, and not just getting the organization started, but in sustaining it over 20 years? I mean, that's incredible. A lot of businesses, and the nonprofit is just that. It's a business. They implode, they tank in the first 3 to 5 years, but you've been able to sustain your organization now for 2 decades. But what are some of the challenges that you've had along the way?
So the biggest challenge is to get families out of denial. So we're technically, I would classify as in the hood. So a lot of people think that because you're in the hood, you can't put together and function a quality program. So they tend to go on the outskirts to other, professional environments, to where they may not give the passion that we would give them, not just because we're, a BIPOC-led organization, but they tend to go out there for sake of insurance, for sake of just, some of the things that Derek alluded to. We have quality programs right in your backyard. And I've seen it for 20 years. Some people would just ride by and they would just stare at the program to get a test drive, but then yet they won't participate. And then when they go somewhere else and pay these, whether it's a large cost, co-pays, or what have you, they're not getting the same feeling, and they always gravitate toward an organization like PEEA. So that's been one of the biggest things. And then 2, you mentioned that females, 99% of the time, they're the ones that frequent PEEA. The fathers may think that it's just their responsibility to get them there, to pick them up, but yet they lack the interaction and a confidence that they can be in these different environments to where their loved one may not participate in the program. So I tell people,
But well, let me stop for a minute, Eric. That's so interesting. So they see families see you as a man leading this program, and you still are having a hard time getting dads to participate?
Yes. Yes. And I try to be really transparent and lead by example, the lived experience. So if you come to me and I have a conversation with them, meet them right where they are, about this is what we're going through right here. This is what the organization looks like. And I get overjoyed to see a father come, keeping them and having them consistently be involved. There's only a handful in these 2 decades of doing that. So I always welcome and get encouraged by that. The second thing would be just leading this organization is funding. Funding. So we're just now starting to get a few grants, very small micro grants. So a lot of that, and I consider this PEEA, we're creating our own lane. So oftentimes when I'm writing for grants, there's always like, well, you don't have a $250K budget, so you can't get this, or you don't qualify for that because you don't have X amount of board members. And oftentimes the larger organizations, they won't come from behind the desk to visit what a PEEA is like, to see the magnitude and the sustainability of what we're doing. So that gets kind of watered down. That's frustrating to me because not just my passion that I think is the best, but funding is critical to what we're doing. And then now that we're based out of Philadelphia, now we're expanding to New Jersey, to Delaware, and then we have probably 39 other U.S. states and probably 11 countries. They all want PEEA programs. So my dedication is to the area where I grew up in West Philly. So West Philly is going to be the pilot program for PEEA centers to pop off all over the place. Another just to share the advocacy part. So Derek has been my mentor, my colleague, and my friend. So whenever I have an idea, I would just pick his brain first. So one was the initiative that we have is autistic person area street sign. Went right to Derek. I got this vision. So I came up with this in 2020 with the Walter Wallace incident, the shooting in West Philly. I grew up a half a block from there. I arrived right as it was ending. And as me being an advocate, I'm looking at things that how could first time responders, if they had some visual cues, some things in place that could have helped them, although Walter Wallace didn't have autism, I consider him having a unique ability. What could have been done to help first time responders? So I went right to Derek. He passed me on to the streets department, traffic engineering division. I worked on it for about 1.5 years. On January 23rd, we came up with, for Philadelphia residents, an autistic person area street sign. So from January 23rd to now, the PEEA staff has pushed over 412 applications. There's been about 90 signs in Philadelphia that's been installed so far. Wow. I'm getting inquiries from non-Philadelphia residents, cities all across the country that want these signs. So this is just
tell us about the signs. What do the signs say?
So autistic person area. They're the yellow caution signs. Mm-hmm. And it's just been amazing to watch them go up.
So they go up. I'm not following you. That you put a sign up. Let's say if you have a family that has a child or adult with autism on, street light road, you put up a sign on that street.
Yes. So there's an application process that you have to go through. So one, it's a 2-step application. One is this has never been done. So I always wanted to establish the data. So when we take it to the next level, whether that be city council or the state level, then we have the documentation, which is going to supersede any conversation. So if you had a loved one, let's say your son, you was interested, you contact us through our website or social media, you would get a Google form, you would fill out some basic information. Then from there, we would send you a PDF version of the application and then all of the important steps, 6 to 8 week process, turnaround. Then that gets forwarded to the streets department. Yes, that's the sign right there. That gets the application goes right to the streets department. From 6 to 8 weeks, they have a surveyor come out to see whether or not they can go an existing pole. Do they need to manufacture one? Dig up the cement, put a metal pole down there, and then your sign goes up. And then from there, you have to renew your sign every year. So the internal data, that's me after an eye procedure. So I'm looking kind of cool right there. But that's for the sunglasses at night. But I was coming from the eye procedure that day. So, but that's what the sign looks like. And then, and that's the block where I grew up on. That's what Elijah frequents a lot. So that's the process. So we don't want our efforts to continue moving forward, but yet by the sake of you not renewing your sign, the sign could be taken down at any point without notice. So the sign has been just tremendous advocacy component, and just to see signs go up on social media. So my only request to help the movement to continue gaining more movement, shall I say, as families, when your sign goes up, post it on social media, because rather you can hear from me all day long about what I think is a good initiative, but when you see others and heartfelt comments on social media, that is taking it to a new level.
Yeah, when we come forward, I do want to talk about policing. We had a horrific shooting outside of LA County, in a county called San Bernardino County, on March 9th, involving a teenage African-American kid who was shot in his home by some sheriff's officers. And both of you, as Black fathers who have probably had the talk that, about police from your own fathers, and maybe have given the talk to your sons, I want to, delve into what advice you would have for a family member that has a young Black person on the spectrum, particularly as it relates to interacting with the police. We always hear about the talk that Black parents have to give their kids, particularly their Black sons, about encounters with the police. Now, if you have a kid on the spectrum that may have some cognitive issues, or just may have, some issues in terms of recognizing what dangers may await them in terms of encounters with the police, what advice would you give parents about that kind of conversation and keeping their sons, particularly their sons, but also their daughters, safe when they are engaging with police officers?
Yeah, this issue is an issue that's very challenging, especially if you have a child with a learning difference like autism. Eric talked about the Walter Wallace Jr. situation that happened in West Philadelphia that prompted him to do the signage working with the streets department. I know with me and my son and my wife, we actually put a card in his backpack that says, my name is Julian Green. Here's my contact information, my mother, my father. But even with that sign card in his backpack, and we've instructed him to go to that backpack because he had difficulty having conversations. We're always in fear that if he comes in encounter with a police officer, someone who may not know Julian, who's outside the community, and he goes to that backpack, what that officer may think in reference to that, and it could be a very tragic situation, just like Walter Wallace Jr. And as a former assistant district attorney, I'm very cognizant of those issues and concerns, but it's really challenging when you're the parent of a child on the autism spectrum, because it's difficult to even have the talk with your child. And even if you try to prepare your son, like I know Eric has done with Elijah, as Sheila and I have done with Julian, it's troubling and concerning, because you can do all the best that you can. But once they go outside of your home or outside of the workplace or the environment where they are accustomed to being in, and they're in the general public and something happens, especially if a child is maybe stimming and having some type of real challenge at that moment, if law enforcement comes to that space, even with a card or other information, you could have a very tragic situation. So it's something that I think about all the time. And as fathers, we try to protect our children, but you can't fix everything. And it's something that's really difficult, especially with children and especially parents with a child on the autism spectrum.
Yeah, the case of Ryan was so tragic because the police actually charged, or they didn't charge him, but they made the allegation in a press conference that he, was attempting to murder this officer that showed up at his home, because they said he charged them with a garden tool in his hand, and they shot him. And it's just such a tragic case. Eric, what about you? What advice would you give a parent of a kid on the spectrum about the talk?
First, I actually have family in San Bernardino, and was I thought at that moment it hit too close to home, and then just as Derek talked about the protective measures that him and his wife put together for Julian, you're at the mercy once they leave our confines of, you know, home or travel independently. And it's unfortunate that Elijah, his verbal interpretation, he won't know what that's like.
Right.
And I think that the only thing that continues to carry me through is prayer. Prayer, like I talked to Elijah before he leaves for work. He texts me when he gets there, and then I know about the time when he gets home. The first thing he does is call. So he has that when his mom is home, but then just that sense of security with me knowing that he's home. There's nothing else that I can do. I wish I could have the talk to say, you know, when you're apprehended or you're stopped, reach for this, that, and the third. But he may pull out his phone. First response may be to call me. And like Derek mentioned, they may not know what that's like. And not only just that part from law enforcement, just being bullied on his commute. You know, he has a regular routine. You know, I don't want him to be apprehended, taken for granted by anything. And then even at his workplace, you know, I always often fear that I'm gonna be the dad that's gonna pop in, and I don't want Elijah doing more work because somebody else is he's doing their job and them, because he just doesn't know the difference because he's a happy-go-lucky helper.
Right.
All of these things, you know,
Are real.
are real, right? And these are things that, you know, I could be paranoid and not keep him in a house, you know, and just keep him sheltered, but that will slow up his progression and the chance of a quality life. So I haven't had a chance of what that's like. Now I do talk to other fathers or other parents about that talk, just basing that off of their interpretation of where their loved one may be on a spectrum. So.
Well, you know, great advice, both of you. We're actually hosting a town hall on Ryan's murder on April 13th, bringing together law enforcement experts, you know, psychiatrists and others that work in the autism space to address this whole issue of mental health, autism, and policing. You know, I'd love to have both of you in attendance, and I'd love to just talk to you about some of the programs that you guys are doing and share the work we're doing. You know, we're definitely stronger together. Congratulations to both of you on the great work you're doing on your sign project, on, you know, just lifting up others in your community, being a role model for so many other dads in your community, and offering these high quality sports and other recreational programs so needed. You know, we have a lot of stuff for our little kids, but as they become adults, the programs start to wane. So just knowing that young adults have a safe place where they can go meet other people, because our kids are just like everybody else. They just want to have fun. They want to socialize. They want to be loved. They want to love back. They want to be productive members of their society. And it's just up to us to meet them where they are, surround them with our love, give them all the support that we can, and then just watch them soar. Again, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Derek. We'd love to stay in conversations with both of you because this is such important work that everyone that's engaged in this work is doing across the country. That's World Autism Day, and that's how we're celebrating it right here on KBLA Talk 1580.